What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. Hi if you're new here. Hi if you're not. Welcome to my new setup. Still a work in progress, but we're getting there, okay? Super excited to be bringing you today's interview. Not going to make this intro very long. We're going to get right into it. We talk MLMs, we talk manifestation, we talk coaching, coaches, other coaching coaches. You know what I'm saying? Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in.
So I'm Bethany Brautigam. I'm in Chicago. I'm an opera singer, and I used to be in an MLM. So my journey with manifestation started with the MLM. A big expectation in MLMs is to do personal development because obviously they have to keep you buying in mentally to the whole concept. So I was already primed to believe that I'm responsible for everything in my life, and that if I'm not seeing the success I want to see, there must be something wrong with my mindset. So when I started being exposed to manifestation, I was like, oh, this is correct. My mindset is wrong. I need to fix something. And I also had been primed to believe that I needed to invest in myself in order to see those returns. So at one point towards the end of 2019, I signed up for Catherine Zinkina's Rich Babe Academy. At the time, she had two programs. She had 4-week Manifestation Babe Academy and then 6-week Rich Babe Academy. And I was like, my income with my MLM had kind of peaked and was like going back down. And so I was like, well, I need this. And I was also kind of, being an opera singer is a huge part of it too, because your life is very unpredictable and your gigs are very unpredictable. So I was like, oh, I need this so I can make more money in my MLM and get more high paying gigs with opera. I'm clearly not at the next level with opera because of my mindset as well. And so I enrolled in that. And then I think it was 2021, she had recreated, she just has one program now. And it was 16 weeks for us. I think she's now expanded it to 20 or 24 weeks even.
Yeah, I think it's pretty long now.
Yeah, it's just the Manifestation Babe Academy. And since we had purchased a program from her before, we all got grandfathered into that. So we didn't have to pay anything extra to do it. We did have to deposit. And once you completed the program, you would get your deposit back. So I think it was $200 or $300. And that was—
And what was the purpose of that?
It was supposed to hold you accountable.
Oh.
So you have homework that you have to do for each module, like written out, and you have to submit it. And they say they don't read it or anything, but it just unlocks the next module. And once you've done the last module, you submit your homework, it's completed, and you get your money back. And I did. I completed it. I had an accountability group for Rich Babe Academy that we are still in a WhatsApp chat. And I had an accountability group, a different one, for the new Manifestation Babe Academy, because not everyone wanted to do it right away. So I had a new accountability group, and several of those people have not completed it. So they've paid their $200 and they just, I don't know if they ever will, like they just haven't, but it was still pretty in the thick of the pandemic because it was early 2021. So we still had a few months before vaccines were, for everybody and everybody could get out and about. But yeah, so I think it was hard to say like, oh, this doesn't work when the first program you did was in fall of 2019, and then the pandemic happens in March of 2020, and we're all just like, stuck inside for a couple of years. And of course, like everybody's struggling financially. And, so I didn't at the time think like, oh, well, my income isn't going up, but like, we're having a collective, I don't know, manifestation crisis or something.
And were you seeing that in, like, I know with a lot of these group programs, there's like Facebook groups and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious if you were seeing that kind of like conversation coming up in these groups of being like, oh, like I'm not getting the results I want. And then people like, I don't know if there's admins or who, chalking it up to the fact that like, oh, well, we're in a global pandemic, so that's why. Like, did you ever publicly see that excuse being given?
I never really saw people ever saying like, oh, this didn't work for me. Everyone would would say, oh, I'm struggling with this particular thing. And they would immediately take the blame upon themselves. So they would never say, I took this, I did all of the homework, I did all of the hypnoses and meditations and everything, and I'm not making more money. This doesn't work. No one ever said that. They would say, oh, I still have this limiting belief around my worthiness to be rich, or I still have this person in my life that I need to draw an energetic boundary. And how do you do this with your business? And there are a lot of life coaches in there, spiritual coaches, people who are also coaching manifestation. So that kind of pyramid of coaches, coaching coaches. And then a lot of people did have success. And of course, they credited it to manifestation. So, but a lot of those were people who were life coaches, spiritual coaches, and I've made my $10,000 months now. I've made my $100,000 months now, and crediting that to manifestation. But I don't know. Like someone said on your live stream last night, you get rich by promising people you have the way to get them rich. And that ignited something in my brain that, like, Catherine didn't get rich through manifestation. She got rich through selling manifestation. It's not that she had gone and manifested wealth in some other industry, and in everything in her life, she had manifested all these things. She started Manifestation Babe famously when she was on her grandma's couch in LA. And her first year, she tells us she made $16,000. In the second year, she made $600,000. And she's like, this is how I did it, through manifestation. I'm like, but that year you made $16,000, you were already teaching people how to manifest, which that didn't connect to me until, much later. But like, wait, no, you can't just retroactively be like, oh, I made this through manifestation, but you didn't get good at manifestation until you started teaching it to other people. Like, shouldn't you be an expert in something before you start teaching someone else?
100%. And that's the piece that's never made sense to me. And the part that I often get like the most criticism for is this idea of, okay, well, I'm essentially selling the idea of something. I don't have to have like accomplished anything in order to sell people on the idea that I know how to do whatever it is. And so it's always very interesting to me that these people, whether it's, manifestation, whether it's fitness coaching, whether it's building a business, I have the secrets to help you unlock $10,000 a month doing whatever that thing is, even though I've never done it myself. Sure, I had a fitness business and maybe I had 10 personal training clients, but I wasn't making 10 figures or 10K until I started teaching other people how to make 10K being a personal trainer. So it's like, no one has actually accomplished the thing that they're telling other people they can accomplish. And then that's why I think we end up with this never ending pyramid of people teaching people to teach people to teach people, because no one can actually do the thing that is being taught. They can only teach other people how to do it.
Exactly.
It's so frustrating, but you don't see it when you're in it. And you and I kind of talked about this briefly before we started recording, but when you're on the inside of one of these coaching programs, whether it's manifestation, whether it's mindset coaching, whether it's business coaching, you don't see this as like a red flag. You're like, I want what she has. And she clearly has the secret figured out. So all I need to do is follow what she's teaching and I will have what she has.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though for me, I spent $2,000 on Rich Babe Academy. I don't know what she's charging now for Manifestation Babe Academy. It's probably more, but I
think it was like I did 1,000 or something.
Yeah, something like that. So I didn't pay a whole. I mean, $2,000 is still a significant amount, but the promise of being able to have everything that you want and being in two industries that are just not set up for very many people to be successful, and years of personal development. And I was actually like pretty good at my MLM at first. It kind of took off somewhat rapidly for me. I was good at the sales part of it. I liked the products and I was good at the sales. And so I had a lot of people join me. I was in a fitness MLM and I enjoyed the fitness programs. So I had a lot of people join my fitness. Like all the opera singers were like, oh yeah, we'll do fitness with you, But yeah, I think that because in the MLM I was love bombed and given so much recognition, I took the credit for my success. So then I also took the blame when things started sliding back the other way, even though it's just the nature of the beast. And then obviously being a performer as well, like there are just more people that want to perform than there are performing jobs. And that's true of any art, you know, acting, singing, art, physical art.
For sure.
It's tough. And I think it really, at first, there's this liberation and empowerment in the idea that you can, you know, control your world. And you're like, oh, I can get all these roles I wanted. I can get all these customers. But then it kind of turns into this immense pressure and anxiety. For me, it manifested in extreme anxiety and insomnia and panic attacks, because if I wasn't getting all the things that I wanted, it must be my fault. And some things just aren't your fault. Some things just, the world is a complex place, and it's not a scarcity mindset to say, okay, 100 women are auditioning for this role and they're only casting one person. I have a 1 in 100 chance. Like, it doesn't matter how much mindset work I do. If they're looking to cast a short blonde, I'm not going to get the role, you know, especially for performers. Like, I'm like, Catherine, you've never been a performer. Like, you can't say that there's enough for everybody. Like, that's just not true. Like, that's not the world that we live in. It's not the nature of our industry. And so it's the denial of reality and the feeling that I was responsible for whether or not I was getting cast, whether or not I was getting these jobs, that made my relationship to my art a lot more unhealthy. Yeah, as things started opening up again and I started auditioning, I became way more attached to the outcome of these auditions. And it's also like, am I allowed to say fuck?
Yeah.
It's a mind fuck, because any inconsistency that you point out in manifestation, they'll come back with the opposite thing. They're like, oh, well, you're supposed to release the outcome. And I'm like, okay, but you just told me I can control everything in my life. They're like, no, but that's the universe's job. But also, like, the universe will only do it for you if you're like aligned with that vibration. So you can't win, because if you are like, oh, I don't care about the outcome of that audition, then you haven't released all your limiting beliefs. But if you do care, you're too attached, and that's not your job. Like, the universe is supposed to do it. And it's just like, oh my goodness.
It doesn't make logical sense.
No, it's really illogical. And it reached a point for me where I would just be devastated. Whereas before I got into manifestation, before I got into my MLM, I had a really healthy, relationship with auditions, that I would just be like, well, I have this set of skills to offer. I'm this type. My voice sounds like this. I'm going to go in and do what I do best. And if I'm right for that show, they'll cast me. And also there are things that are important, like networking, and if you know the right people, and if you've worked with that company before, and none of these are limiting beliefs. They're just realities. But in manifestation, realities are reframed as limiting beliefs. And it's like, oh, you just gave me a reason why you might not get that thing. So that's still clearly in you, and you need to clear that. And it might be something from a past life. So
then when you don't get the results you want, you have the audition and you don't get cast, the blame comes back on you that you didn't follow the principles correctly. So there's never a moment to, and not to say, like, obviously in life, when we make mistakes, we should take credit for those. We don't, like, I'm not one for like blaming other people for our faults. That's not what I'm talking about here. But when we, like you said, are auditioning for a role and 100 other people are auditioning, okay, our chances of getting that role are literally 1%. And so when we don't get it, it's not necessarily our fault. But when we're in the realm of manifestation and we're believing these teachings, we take that blame and we put it on ourselves. And I think that can be really detrimental to our mental health, to our overall well-being, and to our ability to, like, believe in ourselves and have confidence that we are competent and capable in whatever those things are that we want to achieve. So I'd be curious to hear your experience going through that as someone who was, like, heavily into this. I'm sure that at some point or another, you had this experience where you were kind of taking on the responsibility for all of these things that now in retrospect, you're like, I had no control over that.
Yeah, it manifested in my body like as crippling anxiety. It's just hard enough to be a performer. Like, you're already thinking, oh, did I not get cast because I didn't quite hit the high note right, or I wore the wrong dress, or I made this acting choice, or, you know, there's already so many things you constantly have to work on as an artist to try and get better. And then to take on all the stuff you can't control on top of that, it's just way too much. Like, no one can control if they already know someone and they picked out the show for that person and they don't tell you sometimes, you know, sometimes they have roles cast ahead of time and you're going for that same role because that's your type, but they're not going to cast you. So there's just so many things that you can't control. And then to take that on top of everything else, for me, I got a regular 9-to-5 job. Ugh. And yeah. And I felt like, you know, I felt like a failure because I had failed at my MLM, which I've done the work on that. I know that wasn't my fault. I failed at being an opera singer. Most opera singers, like 99% of us, have day jobs. There's very few that can make a living off of just performing. So that also is very similar. It's not a pyramid scheme, but it's similar in terms of statistics. I've accepted now. I think it's fine to have a 9-to-5. You know, I've undone a lot of that, the shaming of the 9-to-5. I'm like, no, it's actually great. I don't have to constantly be on. I have this financial stability and I can do shows. I can have rehearsals in the evenings and on the weekends and still have a steady paycheck. It's amazing. But the first few months, I felt like just an utter failure, not only in my industries, but spiritually and like as a person, because I had failed at manifestation too. And I doubled down. I went through the program a second time. And when I got to a certain hypnosis, there's a certain hypnosis in one of the modules where you go back in time to whenever certain limiting beliefs originated, and then you like root them out, and that's supposed to like root them out forever. And you can go back to like past lives and intergenerational things if that's where it started, or in the womb or wherever. I never got any like pictures. I never like
Yeah, I'm wondering, how do you know? So I'm doing this meditation. It's supposed to like pop into my head where it came from. Is that the idea?
You'll say things like, oh, you might see something, you might not. You know, hypnosis is just a deeply meditative state. You don't have to worry about it. It's working if you just like listen to it and, you know, go into the hypnotic state. Like, some people see things, some people don't. It's covering all your bases. Like, they're always covering all their bases. Like, anything that could happen is always.
I'll say something very vague so that no matter what experience you have, it's applicable to you.
Yeah. I think there were times where I would do a hypnosis where I would make something up, but I knew my brain, I was like, I did that. I was thinking of that. I made that up. Like, nothing ever came to me, but I did that. It's called time techniques. Mm-hmm. And that night when I went to go to bed, this never happened to me in my entire life. I couldn't sleep like all night. I just couldn't sleep. And that was something that had never happened to me. I'd never struggled with insomnia. Even in college, I didn't really pull all-nighters. That wasn't really like my style. And I didn't know why. And a few months later, it happened again. And then finally, like a couple months later, it happened for like a week. Like I couldn't sleep. And I tried to do breath work and EFT and like all this stuff. And I eventually, you know, went to a doctor and got Ambien and started going to therapy and got anxiety medication and tools and things. But it was definitely, I'm not saying this is all manifestation's fault or Catherine's fault. It's not at all what I'm saying. Obviously, we've been through a lot collectively, but the idea of manifestation and everything that's taught, it really gets you to not really acknowledge your true feelings or be real with yourself. It makes you, I know the word gaslight is trendy, but it does make you gaslight yourself.
100%.
Gaslighting is saying to someone reality is different than what it is. And the reality, the good example that we just used is there is a scarcity of jobs for opera singers. That's reality. It's not a scarcity mindset. It's reality. So that's just one example of you gaslight yourself to be like, oh no, there's enough for everybody. I can have whatever I want. And if I don't get it, it's my fault for not, clearing my things and being on that vibration. And so it took me some time, as it does for all of us, to work through all of that stuff. But I would definitely say that contributed in a major way. Doesn't get the entire blame. Obviously, the pandemic was hard on all of us, and all of our industries changed and everybody went through tough times. But yeah, for me, manifestation put so much pressure on me as like a high achieving kind of straight A student type. I wanted to be really good at it, and I did everything exactly right. So, I mean, I'm as close as you can get to like a scientific proof that it doesn't work, because if it did, I'm the one who did everything exactly right and threw myself into it. And I was the only one in my group to complete the new Manifestation Babe Academy and get my deposit back and do all the homework and every single thing. I really wanted it to work really badly. So, and I still blamed myself for a long time for it not working, because that's what you do. You think, well, I must have more stuff to clear. And you're always going to have stuff to clear, because you're a person who's had trauma and bad times, and you live in, well, I live in the US, so I live in a late stage capitalist hellscape, like that's, you're always going to have that. And I do want to point out, manifestation, the way that these people teach it, is incredibly like right-wing trickle-down economics, because they will teach like, oh, well, we can do this together and we can make the world a better place. You can't help people if you're poor, but you can help people if you're rich. It's like very much girl boss, the trickle down economics. You can be a billionaire. Don't hate the rich people.
Exactly. There is so much like money worshiping that goes on, which I guess, by the way, if you're watching this video and you haven't seen, I did a full video, which you can click here to watch, that basically talks about this idea of these coaches that essentially like worship money. They talk about how powerful money is. And listen, I don't have any problems. I obviously have a lot of friends who are in the entrepreneurial space who are quite successful. They make a lot of money, but there's a difference between having a successful business that generates money and then making it your whole personality to talk about how powerful money is and how I want to only be around wealthy people and poor people bring down my energy and all of this just like toxic verbiage that gets tossed around when you end up in these spaces that are so heavily focused on the power of money and how much it equates to your worth as a human.
Yeah. And it's just like tale as old as time. Like, blame poor people for being poor instead of, actually like changing things on a systemic level that would make everybody's lives better. And she has a whole podcast. It woke me up out of a meditation when she said at one point, you can be a billionaire if you want to. And then she has a whole podcast where she talks about like, oh, we shouldn't hate the billionaires because there's not just like a pie in the sky where just because they have more, it means you have less. And therefore we shouldn't hate them, like, because there's enough for everybody. And now I'm like, I should have debunked that immediately. Basic economics, the only reason money has any value is because it's scarce. You can't put too much money into circulation at once. That's how we get things like the Great Depression. And in Russia, it's happened a lot where rubles have been worth nothing because they printed too many. And
even now, the inflation in Canada is like almost 10% because they printed too much money. So
we have a less extreme example right now in the last couple of years in the US and Canada as well with, inflation. And we're finally getting it to calm down a little bit. But it's also, if you look at any billionaire, they got there through exploitation. And there's still like Amazon, Starbucks, there's this mass unionization going on in the States, and they are fighting tooth and nail to squash unions because they do not want workers to have any power. They don't want to raise wages. So I'm like, if you think being rich is the result of having an abundance mindset, why are these mega 100 billionaires so afraid to pay people a fair wage? Like, they clearly don't have an abundance mindset. They're afraid of losing any little bit of power over their workers, and they want to continue treating them terribly. I'm like, we should be holding these people accountable, and holding them accountable is not affecting my ability to make money as a normal person making normal person money.
I think like tying that back to the manifestation piece though, it's like if they can equate, you know, the reason why these people are wealthy to an abundance mindset, then they don't have to acknowledge the privileges that they had playing in their favor in their ability to build whatever their empire is. So obviously I am like very deeply in the coaching space. So I follow or keep tabs on a number of different coaches. And never once have I seen, you know, the realities of, okay, well, sure, Catherine will say, oh, I lived on my grandma's couch. But okay, but what else was going on there? Like I know coaches who had very wealthy partners that floated them while they got their business started. Or, you know, like other circumstances that they don't want to address because they want to be able to sell this like rags to riches story and not address the fact that, you know, 99% of the people that are going to buy into the program are often in financially unstable situations that they're seeking reprieve from. And they're sold on this idea that you have this, you know, snake oil solution that's going to give them what they want. But because of the circumstances that they find themselves in, the systematic issues that they face, they're never going to be able to accomplish whatever this person has sold them on because they face barriers that this individual who is quote unquote successful has not had to overcome.
Right. Yeah. Your grandma let you live rent free in LA.
Exactly.
Like that's pretty great. And I know her story. This is also not privileged information. She was at a Tony Robbins event and she felt the need to end her relationship of 6 years and move to LA because she's always wanted to go there and quit medical school and not become a doctor, but teach manifestation instead. I'm like, oh, so Tony Robbins. Okay. Like
it all comes back to Tony Robbins.
Convinced you to start your grift. Sure. But yeah, those were all choices. You didn't end up on your grandma's couch because you struggled with addiction and you were arrested and you were homeless and you had nowhere else to turn. Like,
and you're on house arrest and you have to go live with family who can supervise you. Like,
yeah. It's just not hearing her own privilege of saying like, I wanted to move to this very expensive city and my grandma let me live with her for free. Like, sure, sleeping on a couch isn't the most comfortable, but she was like 21. Like, you're fine. Your body's made of rubber at that point. Like, it's fine. And she got a 9-to-5. She did Beachbody for a while too. So
yeah, I think she was relatively successful from what I've read on Reddit. I don't know this to be fact. This is just speculation, but I heard she had relative success in her MLM.
Yeah, I think she got to about the same rank that I got to. I don't know how much she made because no one knows. She's never said, but that rank can encompass people barely making anything and people making like a pretty decent amount because MLMs are just wild. So, but yeah, so it really bothered me on looking back. There were several problematic things that she would say. She would talk about like your higher self. Her basic view of the universe is that your higher self goes to earth school to learn lessons. And so your higher self chose your body, your family, everything in order to learn whatever lessons they needed to learn from previous lives or moving forward. And that is also victim blaming. If you happen to be disabled, if you happen to have grown up in an abusive family, if you grew up poor, I mean, we're already like, well, you have a poverty mindset, so that's why you're poor. And like, you know, don't complain about these other situations in your life because your higher self chose them. Like you chose it, essentially. Super problematic. And she'll also say right away in the beginning of the program, like every religion is welcome here. Like whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, you know, and she'll pull out like one verse from everybody's holy book as evidence of manifestation, which doesn't work. I mean, I grew up Christian. I'm pretty like well versed. Like I know the Bible pretty well. And I'm like, that doesn't support the idea of manifestation. And then you can't just turn around and be like, okay, well, this is how the universe works. Your higher self chooses this. And I'm like, well, I can't speak on other religions, but Christians don't believe that. And you just said like manifestation works for everybody. So again, it's like these ideas that are not aligning and conflicting with each other, but everything's okay. Everything is always like, oh no, it's fine. Like it still works somehow. But yeah, that I don't know about other religions, but I do know that there's also a big mishmash of pulling from Hinduism with like chakras and past lives, and pulling from Eastern religions in various ways. And she does a whole thing where she talks about going to Costa Rica and taking ayahuasca, and how Mother Ayahuasca showed her different things. And I'm like, that's an indigenous thing. So we have this white woman who's pulling from all these different cultures and ultimately creating this like very money worshiping, capitalist, essentially right-wing thing, and profiting off of all these other cultures. So it just feels like appropriation. It feels like ableism. She talked about how she manifested her healthy pregnancy, and that's so problematic to me. I've never had kids, but obviously I have friends who have struggled with miscarriage and infertility. We all know people who have. And to say that you can manifest your baby, you can manifest a healthy pregnancy. And I'm glad she did. I'm glad she had a healthy pregnancy. Good for her. Like, I would never wish anything bad on anyone, but you don't say that, like, because then women will be blaming themselves for miscarriages. Like, there's just a lot of topics that are, and I'm white too, so I don't want to be the mouthpiece for things like systemic racism, but obviously people of color face challenges in terms of earning the same amount as their white counterparts, and that's not a limiting belief. That's a reality. So it's just another thing that I think is really problematic.
But again, there's never this sense of accountability. Not to say that she's like to blame for all of these systematic issues, but I do think there is a like level of acknowledgement or space for some sort of acknowledgement when you are someone who is making absurd amounts of money, in my opinion, teaching these narratives that you've essentially just like exploited out of other resources. Whether it's religion, whether it's other people's teachings. I've heard and read a lot of information. I don't know this to be fact. Again, it's just alleged, but a lot of the like course information is just regurgitated from other like known thought leaders and their materials. So not to say that you're like, nothing is really ever truly original in this day and age, I don't believe. But I think that there is space for like crediting where you're getting your ideas and information from. And I think that from what I've heard, that's lacking.
It is a little bit. I do want to mention that since 2020 with the Black Lives Matter movement, she does now offer, I think, 2 per year full scholarships to BIPOC people who want to take her course. So she's trying. And again, I believe that she believes everything she teaches. So I don't think it's like intentional. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in her head, but I wouldn't be the one to speak on that. But I would be interested to see how like people of color would respond to her and how they would analyze like her actions and whether like offering those scholarships is, at least they're not losing money on it. But I think the content itself is problematic. So I don't think it's really helping, but I don't know. I can see, in all fairness, I can see how doing that course could give someone the courage to ask for a raise or something, because now they are confident, or they believe the universe is working in their favor now. So they go and ask for a raise. And I'm like, well, in that case, that's great. I don't think the universe was ever like working in your favor. I don't think manifestation is real, but something gave you the courage, the belief to do that. So I don't want to say she's the devil or she's intentionally scamming people. I think she really does think she's helping people. But like you pointed out last night, there's a very narcissistic quality to a lot of these coaches that feel like they've been given this calling by God or the universe to help people, and they're making all this money and they're like, oh, look how many people I've helped. I'm so amazing.
It seems very like altruistic, in my opinion, of just like exactly that. I was put on this earth for a purpose much greater than you little 9-to-5 minions who work your stupid little jobs. I am here to make an impact and that's what I am going to do. And then they take obviously all of the credit for it of like, look at all these lives that I've impacted so positively. And to me, it's just like a big ego circle jerk.
Yeah. I grew up, this probably also was why I was susceptible to it. So I grew up evangelical Christian, as I've mentioned, and that was definitely preyed upon with the MLM of like, oh, God's given you, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my ministry. Like God's given me this way to like help women get in shape and form this community. And this is so great. And then I kind of went through a period of deconstruction and faith crisis and kind of changing my beliefs and all that. And that left me vulnerable to other spiritual thoughts and looking for more women-led spirituality that was not so patriarchal. And I was like, oh, this kind of goes along with my personal goals. And I now have the freedom to admit that I want to have a lot of money, which was not something I was kind of allowed to admit as a Christian. And so I feel like I was especially vulnerable to that side of it because I still had that kind of instilled with me from a young age of wanting to be called to this higher purpose, which is, I don't know, it's a good and bad thing in my opinion, but I think more people need to speak out on like, it's okay to be like a normal person. And that can be a really beautiful and impactful life. You don't have to have thousands of followers and people constantly admiring you. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be a multi-millionaire, and you can still make an impact on the world and make it a better place. So that got a little bit cheesy there at the end, but I'm a little bit cheesy. So
no, but I totally get it. And I totally agree. It's just like, I think once you kind of get indoctrinated, for lack of a better term, into the industry, it's almost as if you feel pressured to fulfill this. I have to leave an impact. I have to make something bigger than myself. I have to be X, Y, and Z. And so it can be really easy to lose sight of the fact that like the majority of people aren't going to do that. And that's okay. And you don't have to do that. Yeah. There's like this weird pressure to behave in a particular way. And so,
yeah. And that's why I felt so much shame for the first several months to the first year of working my 9 to 5. Cause then when people asked what I did, and I'm like, well, I'm an account manager at an office, but I also am an opera singer, you know, like I wanted that, like I'm special thing. And I'm like, it was just so much shame that I had to work through. And now I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I have a 9 to 5 and I sing on the side, and I sing because it brings me joy. And I don't care if I'm ever super famous opera singer like Renee Fleming. Like I can just be me and do the things that I love. But you know, therapy is really great with a therapist who is, you know, has gone to school for that and
weird
and is, you know, has passed their boards or whatever. You know, actual licensed therapist can really help you work through your issues, and you can then actually be happier instead of this kind of manufactured, like, I'm in alignment with happiness, so I'm happy. And oh, if bad thoughts are coming, I have to like purge them from my system so they don't manifest. It also makes you paranoid because they tell you, sorry, I just leapt onto another topic, but they tell you you're manifesting all the time, whether you're conscious of it or not. So if you are thinking about being poor all the time and you're thinking about how there's too much month at the end of money or whatever it is they say, and you're thinking about your bills, you're just attracting more thinking about bills. And so the whole point of doing a manifestation course is to take something that you're doing unconsciously and make it conscious, which can result in anxiety and paranoia, because then when those thoughts come up, you're like, oh my gosh, am I going to manifest that? You know? And they'll also say, oh, well, of course you're going to have thoughts, and like, you just let yourself feel your feelings because what is coming is going. And I'm like, okay, these bad thoughts and feelings are just like releasing. That's why I'm thinking them. And so then I would try to release them. So you're just tying yourself in knots all the time to try to get your vibration like at the right spot.
Yeah, it's just like mental gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like.
And I'm sure that, you know, if some manifestation people watch this, they will comment and be like, oh, well, she did it wrong because you're not actually supposed to do this, or she had anxiety because she didn't feel her feelings enough, or she didn't actually like do this right. They just always have a way that any critique you have of them is, well, you just don't get it. You just don't get manifestation. You just did it wrong.
100%. And so I have another video, which I'll shout out right here, which talks about, why manifestation isn't real, which I'm sure you've probably watched that one. But a lot of the comments are from people who obviously believe in manifestation and think that I'm completely incorrect. Mm-hmm. And they'll say things like, yeah, you're wrong. Manifestation is real because I did, X, Y, and Z in my life. And I think this ties back to what you said about 10 minutes ago, is this idea of like going for the job interview or asking for the raise because you finally like feel like the universe is going to provide you, when really it was just like you built your self-confidence enough, you set a goal, and then you took action to make that goal become reality. Yeah. Why do we have to give the credit to some like non-existent, in my opinion, third-party being that it's like, why can't you just admit that like you did that? You own it. Like, I wanted this thing. I took the action. It was scary and I accomplished it. It's like, right. I'm applauding you. Yeah. Take credit.
I watched the one you did about like the metaphysics and like
the quantum mechanics. Yeah.
Quantum mechanics. Yeah. So I will give you some tea from inside the Manifestation Babe Academy. She offers a lot of proof in the first module, and it's all YouTube videos. So it's all something someone has put together on YouTube. There are no peer-reviewed studies, but there is one on that two-slit experiment. That's one of them, which you have debunked. There's one on the placebo effect, which is like, yeah, we already have proved the mind-body connection. Like, that's a thing science has studied. We haven't proved the mind-body bringing something external in connection, which is what you're trying to do. And then the other one was about like the water crystals taking different shapes based on the emotions
you talk to them or whatever.
Which is like, how do you measure like, I hate this water? Like, is that, I want to know like behind the scenes what that looked like. But none of them actually prove manifestation. They're all just kind of persuasive, like cartoons and things. And then she has some like declassified CIA documents, which if you read, the gist is like, if you believe you can do something, you're more successful at doing it, which again, we've seen with athletes, if they visualize that can be helpful. But every Olympian who goes to the Olympics probably visualizes themselves winning a gold medal. But again, this is not a scarcity mindset. Only a certain amount of people, only one person in each event can win the gold medal.
Exactly. Like 100% there is like a certain level of delusion, I think, that is required to accomplish anything in life. Like, I start posting videos on YouTube, I have to believe that people are going to want to watch them, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, I don't know. I don't give credit to the universe for the fact that, I have 12,000 subscribers now. Like, that's awesome. But like, I did the work to make the videos to get the people to watch them. It wasn't just like I believed enough in myself for it to happen. It seems so like self-deprecating to think that way. And again, I don't want this to be like someone's watching this and they think this way and they like feel shame. Right. I used to think this way too. I get it.
Me too.
Like, now that I don't, I'm like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And technically you have more of an actual abundance in YouTube, because I can subscribe to you, and I can subscribe to DC, and I can subscribe to, Hannah Alonso. Like, I can watch all of your content, I don't have to only be, whereas in Beachbody, if you sign up under me, like, I'm your coach, you can't buy something from someone else without switching to them, and in sports, again, there can only be one gold medalist. So there are some things where it's like, yeah, maybe this space is saturated, but like, people can consume as much content on YouTube and on the internet as they want. So in that case, but that, again, that's just building your confidence. Like, you have something to say it.
The universe isn't going to control whether or not someone watches my YouTube channel, in my opinion. It's
the YouTube algorithm is.
Exactly. And the quality of my content and the fact that I showed up and recorded the video, that's what's going to determine if someone watches it. But if I sit in my house and I'm like, oh, I'm too scared, then obviously no one's going to subscribe to me because I'm not pumping out content. So it's just
Yeah.
it's so frustrating to me to like see people who are successful accrediting that success to something else. It's like, I just want you to take ownership for the fact that you worked really fucking hard and you accomplished something. And we don't need to pretend that some like magical universal being is the one that's responsible for it. Like you put in the effort, take the work, especially like as women. Like if it's like, why can't we take credit for the work that we're doing? Ah!
Yes, absolutely. And I think in a way it is kind of, it's like giving away the credit, but also taking the credit. Like, oh, well, the things that are unearned, like privilege and, you know, things that you might have gotten through that someone else in the same position wouldn't have gotten. You can be like, well, I manifested it. So I have this abundance mindset. Like clearly I make millions of dollars selling these courses because of my abundance mindset, not because I'm like a thin, conventionally attractive white woman who was able to dedicate all my time to this because my grandma let me live there rent free.
And again, so I wonder if it comes back to this idea of like, we don't want to acknowledge certain privileges. So we just give away all the credit to something else and then it's not my problem.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think of any other like tea that you might want from within the program. Because honestly, I don't feel like if someone was thinking about doing the program, I would say there's nothing inside there. It's hard for me to come up with any tea. Obviously, I don't want to get sued by Catherine either, but that was the hard thing. I was like, well, I don't want to get sued, but I couldn't think of anything that bothered me about the program that wasn't also mentioned like in her podcast or publicly on her Instagram. She goes a little bit more in depth, but honestly, it's all out there. And it's all pulled from other books about manifestation. And it's all pulled from Tony Robbins. Like I'm pretty sure the whole module on limiting beliefs where you take like a table and the legs are the limiting beliefs and you like knock out the legs. Like that's a Tony Robbins thing. So,
and it's taught in like every life coaching certification on the planet.
And at least I still have access because even now that she's expanded it, so I could look again. But when I did it the first time, the last 3 or 4 modules were all human design. So she's just teaching us what human design is. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
But it's like a mixture of like Kabbalah and astrology and Hindu chakras and stuff. And I guess the guy who invented it was super problematic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he died a while ago, so I guess they just don't talk about him. But she was super into it a couple of years ago. I don't know if that's what she's super into now, but she was obsessed with it. So she like went deep dived on all of the different human design types. And she was like taking a course in it at the time. So I think that was her next certification she was going to get. And it was honestly like none of it is really about manifestation. So I don't know. But it was in the course. So
I see. So she's still like updating it with whatever the flavor of the week is.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah, I would just say to people like, don't spend $2,000, like, or however much it is now. You know, it's not as much of a horror story as that person who spent her 401k, but you can go to your public library, read The Secret. And that's the gist. You know, you've got the gist. You can find it all for free on podcasts and YouTube. And I mean, it's great. Meditation has great health benefits. Do meditation, look at life realistically, but also build your self-confidence. And it's worth doing to believe that you're worthy of things. That's great. I love that. Like you're worthy of your goals and everybody is worthy of having enough money to live a comfortable life, in my opinion. But you don't need to, if you're in a desperate situation, you know, go job hunting, reach out to, you know, whatever resources are available to you, but don't spend $2,000 on an online manifestation course because ultimately that's not going to help you get out of your situation.
Exactly. There's like a level of optimism, I think, that can be incredibly valuable when you are facing, you know, struggles or challenging circumstances. But then to, you know, give your last dollar to someone who's essentially going to tell you to believe in yourself and visualize the things you want, like you're capable of doing that on your own for free.
Yeah. And they all have a story of how they spent a lot of money on something.
Exactly.
I remember reading Jen Sincero's book, You Are a Badass at Making Money. I read the original as well. And the two stories that stick out to me is that she once worked with like an $80,000 coach because she knew it was going to help her get to that next level. And she asked people for help and maxed out credit cards. And another one was she went to get a new car and she had to choose between a Honda and an Audi. And even though she couldn't afford it, she bought the Audi because it made her feel so much more abundant. And now look, it worked. And both of those stories, I'm like, the first one, you just want people to buy stuff from you and buy your coaching. And the second one is just terrible advice because it's not going to work out for most people. Like if you can't afford an Audi, don't buy an Audi. A Honda is a great car.
Exactly. 100%. And I think that came up in the live stream yesterday too. This where like Dean or Tony or whoever's talking is like telling this story about, you know, I spent my last dollar to go to this guy's conference or whatever. And they're just planting the seed because later this week, they're going to pitch you on whatever the latest program is. And it's probably $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. So
yeah,
it's always exactly every coach ever is like, if you don't invest in yourself, you're not going to be successful. And it's like, that's not true.
Want to invest, you can go online and open a Vanguard account. Or
exactly.
Like you can get a robo investor, you can get Acorns, whatever it is, where you can invest $5 at a time and put it in.
I'll put my Wealth Simple link in the description.
Yeah. I use Ellevest because it's run by women and
that's awesome.
Prioritizes. I don't think they're in Canada. I think they're just in the US, but I like that. You can choose to target investments. So if you want some of your portfolio to be, you know, small businesses,
female founded,
energy, green businesses, whatever, you can like have a targeted portfolio. So I like that. It's still a robo advisor. So I don't have to actually pick my stocks. I just pick generally what my goals are. So yes, invest your money in. Also, high yield savings accounts have great rates right now. So you're going to get more on that 4.5% high yield savings account than you will by putting that into a life coach or a manifestation guru.
Exactly. And like, I know a lot of the times too, the draw can be like not having a sense of community. And I'm always just encouraging people like, there's so many Facebook groups, join a free Facebook group, find a local, like meetups.com usually has events around local interests. Like there's so many. YouTube, join someone's live stream, live chat. There is no community like the live stream, live chat.
Yes. Yes. I know I've connected with some other ex-Beachbody people because I found their Instagrams and YouTubes and I was like, oh, people are talking about the thing that, you know, is concerning me right now. And I've joined some Facebook groups for people who have deconstructed evangelical Christianity and they get you, and I've gone to meetups and met people who have become really great friends and we hang out. It's great. So
exactly. And
yeah, you can definitely find that community. So yeah, that can be hard.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your story. I think that this is going to be really valuable for a lot of people. Obviously, the whole like life coaching manifestation MLM space is still running rampant, unfortunately. Hopefully things will change soon. But until that time, I appreciate anyone who's willing to come on and share their story. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope I was able to help. I really appreciate the work that you're doing and I love your content and I'll keep commenting and boosting it in the algorithm as much as I can.
I love it. Thank you so much. Like I mentioned throughout the course of this interview, I will have all of Bethany's links to social media, YouTube, TikTok, etc. linked down below in the description, as well as I will literally include my referral link to Wealth Simple if you're interested in learning how to start investing here in Canada. That's going to be it for today's video. If you're interested in submitting your own scam story, the Google form to do so is linked down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already. Take care, comb your hair, and I'll leave you with this interview right here next. Bye!